Thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate you sharing your time with me. Welcome to Pattern Grading Warmup 2025. If we are meeting for the first time, thank you so much for trusting me with that time. I want to take a little bit to share about who I am, how I got here, what's going on. My name is Julie Robinson. I live in New York City, and I have worked as a designer and product developer in the fashion design industry for over 15 years. And it was my love of knitting, my love of craft, my love of DIY culture that first led me to pursue that career in fashion design. So now that I've been working in this industry for a while, it's been really awesome and amazing to be able to come back to my fellow DIY creatives, and share what I've learned over the years. And it's my intent and my hope that you all take this information that I share with you and you go out into this wide world of craft and craft publishing and help make it a better and more inclusive place. This is the 5th year that I have hosted a pattern grading warm-up. I've been working with people in the fiber arts industry since around 2019. And this is one of my absolute favorite days of the year. Every year, hundreds of designers like you, editors, we all come together to sharpen our skills and, like I said, make the craft publishing space a better place. So I'm going to introduce you all to the pattern grading process tonight. And in this presentation, I'm going to give you a deeper understanding of why exactly it is that we grade and some things that you can do to be more successful at it in the future. We'll also discuss how the conversation around size inclusivity has shifted in the past couple of years and what kind of opportunities this presents to you. Because let me tell you, the landscape that it is now is not the same world that it was in 2019 when I started working with fiber artists and teaching or leading this workshop. So, like I said, we're talking about 2019. I want you to think back to those days, that was a big year for the fiber arts industry. It was a big year of people kind of realizing just how impoverished things were for people at the margins of the size ranges that were being offered. So if you were a knitter or crocheter on any sort of online platform, especially Instagram, you'll remember, people were having realizations left and right, just how underserved plus size makers were. And makers rightly started demanding that designers and publishers do a lot better. And unfortunately, as with any sort of demand, this was immediately met with a lot of defensiveness. A lot of designers, a lot of publishers were like, you want me to do what? That's another job for me to do. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do. And I'm saying all this not to try to demonize those people, because I know there's a section of them that legitimately just did not care, right? But in my experience, and most of the people that I was talking to, even some of those people who had those initial very defensive reactions, they're having them because they care a lot, right? What makers were doing, they're pointing out this glaring error. And a lot of these people just, it had never occurred to them. And something that I noticed among a lot of the people that I was talking to, right, is that they cared a lot, and they cared so much to the point that they were like, getting themselves caught in the state of anxiety, right? So if that sounds like you, I bet it might. Why don't you drop a little comment in the comment section? Maybe you guys can connect. um, so around this time, I was also doing some realizing. And I had recently written my very first knitting pattern, and it was an independent release. And the design was a little bit unorthodox. I was working on a pair of shorts. And I knew that I wanted to have an editor on my side who wasn't just going to be checking my math, but was going to be able to give me some feedback on the construction methods that I had chosen to use, and specifically about my grading choices. So I started to speak to a few different editors about the job, and something that I learned very quickly was that pattern grading was not a standard skill that editors knew, and it wasn't really officially part of the tech editing process. And frankly, I found that very shocking. I was like, you know, what I basically learned was that the whole tech editing process came down to two things. One, making sure that the numbers added up. If there was a number in your pattern, does, like line A correspond to line B, correspond to line C? If it does, great. And then the second thing that technical editors are always looking out for is uh, copy copy errors, right? But neither of those two things involve pattern grading. And so I was kind of confused at the time, right? I was like, why would this not be a standard part of the process? And, I've come to understand now a little bit more about why that is, but I still don't completely agree with it, right? Which is one of the reasons that I run workshops like this. But something that, learning that piece of information made clear to me was, why I saw so many pattern designers running around being afraid of pattern testing. That was something that didn't make sense to me before. I was like, you designed it, you know how it should fit, and you wrote the pattern and you got it tech edited. Like, what do you mean you're afraid of what happens in testing? But, if nobody is looking out for your pattern grading and you're already not feeling 100% on your own skills, of course you're going to feel insecure, right? You don't have the support that you need. And the person who is supposed to be supporting you on the technical aspect of this process is, equally blind, right? So since that point, I've done a fair amount of tech editing myself for yarn companies and some publications. And one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of the designers I work with tend to rely heavily on me for grading and grading input. And obviously, that's one of the main reasons that these places tend to hire me, is for that expertise and for that, that ability to help the designers in this way. But when I do work with these designers, another issue tends to pop up, which is I start to ask them these really important questions about their design, the design that they came up with, that they should be the expert in. And sometimes they really struggle to answer those questions. So all of that is why I'm so, so, so passionate about this topic. It's why I lead this workshop every year, because improving size inclusivity is a group effort, right? We need more editors. We need more designers who know about this, who are going to advocate for this, and who are trained in this so that they can do it effectively. There's really nothing else to be done other than to just bring more of us into the world. And that's why I'm so excited to see each and every one of you guys here today. So I did a little AMA earlier this week, and I sent out a request to a bunch of you to send in any and all questions you have, pattern grading related. And some of the more common responses are these. So number one, far and away, is where do I begin? And that question is usually coupled with another one, which is, how do I make sure I'm being size inclusive? So first of all, you completed your first step. This is literally where you begin, right here in this workshop. So kudos to you. And a little bit later, we'll talk about what makers are expecting in an inclusive pattern and how you can use that information to go above and beyond those expectations and create something that's really awesome and a truly unique experience for them. So these first two questions, like I said, usually submitted together. And there's what those questions literally say, but there's also some feelings behind there. So I want to highlight those for you. First is a feeling of desire. There's a desire to share, and there's a desire to be seen. So there's a desire to share your work with other people, and there's a desire to hopefully make those people who are going to buy from you, make them feel seen. Or maybe you're somebody who has yourself experienced firsthand how hard it can be to find clothes that fit your exact proportions. So maybe it's about you, being that change you want to see in the world and creating something that's for people like you, right? The second feeling that I hear when I look at these questions is fear, right? And we talked a little bit about that in one of the previous slides. There's a fear of being shunned. There's a fear of failing in some way, and like that is just so sad to me, right? And it's big and it's understandable, right? Especially if you're trying to make a go of this as an independent designer, and it really does. It can feel like it's just you against the world, but you're here, like I said, you're already making an effort. And if you put the principles that I'm going to share with you tonight into practice, I can guarantee you that you are going to be rewarded. The third most common question I get is, how do I make this easy? And I always want to be transparent and honest with you guys. So, I'm just going to say that ease is a relative construct. What is easy for me is not necessarily easy for you, especially when it comes to grading. Like I said, I've been working with people on their pattern grading for around 5 years now. And I can say most people, especially if it is your very first time, this is going to be something that's relatively difficult for you, but it is something that gets easier with practice. So practice, with practice comes ease, right? But what I can offer you off the bat is I can make this big, hairy process a lot simpler. And I can save you time because I can help you from letting that pretty little head just start spinning, 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 and don't stop. We're going to stop that second guessing, right? And I can help the way that you approach grading become much less stressful. So we're going to bring down that stress level, but learning pattern grading is going to do more than just that, right? It's going to open up a lot of doors for you. First of all, creatively, if you know how to grade patterns, you can take on more, interesting projects, things that are more complicated. And this is something that can also start to open up some doors professionally for you. And investing in something like this, sharpening your skills, making it known that that's, the kind of person that you are and how you approach this work, can really do wonders for you because, I'm sure as you guys know, this is a very crowded field. There's a lot of people who want to be pattern designers. There's a lot of people who publish patterns who, kind of don't really have business doing that, They don't really put the time and attention into that work that they should. So engaging in a workshop like this, just you being here, you're already setting yourself, head and shoulders above the rest. So by the end of this workshop, you're going to have a better understanding of pattern grading as a tool. And I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step process to guide you through that, right? So by the end of this, I know that at least some of you are going to be able to be ready to get up and start grading your patterns tonight. I've seen it happen. I know it seems wild, but it's real. So I keep saying this, but the size inclusive conversation has, moved and morphed quite a bit since I started leading this workshop. And makers have certain expectations now. They are definitely expecting guidance from you on how and where to adjust their pattern for fit. They're demanding adequate testing time. So, that means your largest sizes should be able to finish a pattern test completely, just as much as a smaller size should be able to. And finally, I see this all the time. Makers want to know exactly who is being included in your inclusive size range. I think that's the one that just takes me out, how common that comes up. You have to tell people that you're designing for them. You have to give them the tools so that they know what they're looking at, right? So not only are, makers asking for these sort of things. When I first started talking about this conversation, inclusive design was just synonymous for larger sizes. But what people have really come to expect, as you can see from these bullet points, is a more holistic view. It's not just about making things bigger. It's about recognizing how people come in different proportions and trying to prepare them for whatever they might need. So I really do hope that you see and hear this as a opportunity, right? Um, because this is a brand new way that you can speak directly to your customer in a really intimate way. And pattern grading is the key, like I keep saying, to achieving a more inclusive fiber arts industry, right? There's nothing else to do except for to train more people and to get more editors out there to work with designers on designing better patterns. That's really how we do it. And then the last thing I kind of alluded to is, makers more than anything are looking for ways and reasons to trust you. So pattern grading is something that goes a really long way to cultivating trust with your makers. And investing in learning pattern grading can catapult you to the top of the heap when you're being considered for things like collaborations with a yarn company or publishing opportunities. And, I don't need to be the one to tell you, you guys are all very avid makers and you guys are keenly aware of the state of craft publishing right now. It's tough out there, I'm going to share a couple example designs with you, both from myself and from past students. And two of these have been published in print magazines, were published in print magazines. And neither of these print magazines are with us anymore. you know, um, there were not that many when I started, and there are next to zero. There's practically none left at this point. Um, so yeah, I think I see cultivating your skills in pattern grading and being able to articulate that to your audience is going to be huge going forward because, that old publishing model was really a way to help you establish credibility with your makers, right? You were chosen to be part of this group, right? And, elitist as that sounds, but that's what people were looking for. And I think that's still something that people are looking for. And it's why you see people who make it, quote, to the top, very popular designers continue to be popular because all of that is, it's social proof. Other people made it and they were successful. If I make it, I will also be successful. So we need to start to look for alternative ways for you to build that kind of authority with your makers. Let's talk about how to do that. Today, it is considered standard that knit and crochet garments need to be published with a full chest measurement range from 30 inches to 60 inches, which is about 76 centimeters to 152 centimeters. This is the minimum to be considered size inclusive. Being a designer or tech editor means you need to be able to grade patterns for a very wide range of sizes. But how in the world are you supposed to make garments for people with bodies that are different from yours? How are you to create, standard sizes for people who are not very standard, right? That's most of us. And how do you know what those people even look like or what they need? I hear so many designers and editors saying to me that, like I've read all the blog posts. I don't know about this. There's just too many moving parts. There's all this conflicting information. Uh, if I just had, that one formula for whatever, construction they happen to be working on at the time, if I had that one formula, I would be fine. It would fix everything. And I understand what they're getting at, but it's not actually going to solve the issue that they think it's going to, right? There is not one formula or even one single set of formulas that is, going to fix everything for you. What you actually need is this holistic way of viewing the garment, of viewing it and of documenting it. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So who should know pattern grading? Basically everybody who works on a pattern should know about pattern grading. And as we've already said, grading has not historically been a skill for technical editors, but more are learning every year, which is super, super heartening. Like I said, I had incorrectly assumed that this was a key skill to becoming a technical editor, but long story short, that assumption was informed by some other experiences that I've had working in commercial fashion design. And as you can imagine, when I'm working with those teams, they are a fair amount larger. And the way that our shared knowledge is spread out is just a little bit different. And I assumed that there would be more of a one-to-one, but there's not. So in the world of yarn crafts, there are usually only two people who are involved in the entire process. And that goes equally for people working as independent designers, or even if you're working at a quote unquote big company. A lot of those big companies are way, way, way smaller than you might imagine. So, in my humble opinion, both the designer and the technical editor really, 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 really should know how to grade. Anybody who's touching the pattern needs to know, because what ideally happens is that there's going to be a balance of power between the designer and the technical editor. And if one person is just kind of deferring to the other, that can throw that balance out of line, right? Um, so we need to make sure that everybody involved understands what is happening. So I made these little handy illustrations for you. This is roughly how things kind of organize themselves between commercial fashion design versus fiber arts. So like I was saying, in commercial fashion design, there's usually a much larger team that's working on development. If we're very lucky, there might be a pattern maker in the studio. Ooh, so luxurious. But more often than not, they're probably over at the factory. So as a creative designer, I'm usually dealing with a technical designer. And the technical designer is responsible for, among other things, checking the patterns when they come in, deciding grade rules for different designs. Meanwhile, like I said, in yarn craft, designers and technical editors take the equivalent tasks that a technical designer would be responsible for, and they kind of split those between the two of them. So if these are the only two people involved in the process, and if these two people are responsible for checking each other's work, then everybody needs to know how to pattern grade, because otherwise, like I said, that self-checking mechanism is going to break down very quickly. So I also know from experience, some designers do take my class and they decide somewhat quickly, spreadsheets, not for me. Bless up. I'm going to be hiring out this work. And, that's fine. That's totally cool. I completely understand. I still think you should know how to pattern grade, even if you're not getting super deep into those spreadsheets and working all of those formulas by yourself. You need to have a good overview of what's happening and what you hope to receive, right? Because if you hire that work out and then it comes back to you, it's not that pattern grader whose name is going on that pattern, right? And it's not the technical editor's name who's going on the pattern, it's yours. And so you are the big boss, you're the head honcho, you're in charge of it all. So you need to know what in the world is going on. You need to be able to sign off on it because you want to be able to press publish and feel, 100% confident that you understand what's going out there into the world. So what is pattern grading literally? Pattern grading is about translating this sample design into larger and smaller sizes so that more people can wear it. The second half of pattern grading is that it's about maintaining visual integrity or visual consistency throughout all sizes. So this is the part that trips people up, that second part. Pattern grading is not just about making an item that can, fit over somebody's head or fit over a larger body. We need to make sure that, the sleeve is hitting around the same place on the arm, that, the neckline is hitting around the same place on the shoulder, that the neck depth isn't getting too long or unruly, things like that, right? And then the third thing about pattern grading is that in order to achieve these first two points, we are going to make a series of conscious decisions because we decide what happens to our patterns here, Like I said earlier, I get those comments from people who are like, "Oh, just, give me the formula and I will plug in my measurements and then pop, here comes my perfect pattern." No, that's not how that works. You can't outsource that level of trust, to a spreadsheet. You need to be able to understand what's going on in it. You need to be able to go back and, like I said, make those conscious decisions so that you know what you're putting out into the world and you can get that desired outcome. So if pattern grading is such an ordeal, and if, as I'm sure some of you know, it's going to result in an item that's not going to fit you perfectly, why do we even bother? What is the point? The point of grading is to give everybody a level playing field. A well-graded garment is just the start to an amazing, awesome finished project. So pattern grading is a technology. And hard as it is for us to believe today, there was in fact a time where pattern grading did not exist. So pattern grading is something that allows us to speed up the production of garments. And so that can mean, in a factory for commercial fashion design, but also it helps us as makers speed up our making process. So grading kind of went mainstream, like I said, around the Industrial Revolution. So like 1850s to late 1800s, right? The Industrial Revolution's kicking into gear, publishing prices are falling, the garment industry as we know it is coming into being, and you could, for the first time, order sewing patterns out of a catalog. And you could either take those home, make it yourself, or you could take it to a dressmaker and have them do it for you. And these early patterns had little, if any, instructions at all. They were just kind of like outlines on top of each other. And so today's patterns are obviously a lot more involved in this. And I feel like this is ultimately a great thing. It makes all of these patterns a lot more accessible to not just beginners, but people who are, anywhere building that skill set. Anybody who's not, an absolute expert can access patterns these days. So the goal of pattern grading is to, like I said, give everybody this level starting place. And the idea is that somebody can at least find a size that is similar to them. They can look at a size chart, they can find something that closely resembles their measurements. And if necessary, they can make like a few adjustments. Hopefully they'll be like relatively minor, but obviously it's much easier to say, add a bust dart to an existing pattern than it is to see something beautiful and then have to sit down and go, how did they do that? So now it's time for my absolute favorite slide in the whole presentation. We know who our players are here in the pattern development process. We know what our motivations are for pattern grading. So let's see where it fits into the whole process. Beautiful, beautiful. So this is my pattern development chart. This is how every single design goes from being just a mere idea in your head to being a beautiful, amazing, finished, published pattern. And I intentionally use the word development here instead of design, because when people hear design, they tend to think art. And, that's great. But one of my favorite sayings is design is art with a job to do. And we definitely have a job to do. So I don't know if you guys think about it this way, but I really love thinking about sweaters as like little tiny pieces of soft architecture. So this is kind of like a little warm house for my body. So I like to say development because I want to highlight the technical skills that are required to bring this work into being. And I also use development because it implies that there may be various versions and stages, right? There's a building, there's a progression. Sometimes things come out perfectly the first time you do them, obviously, but there's always exceptions. That's usually the exception, honestly. Things usually, need a little bit of tweaking from their first iteration. So creating alternatives and considering outcomes is all part of this awesome design ride that we're on. So I'm going to zoom you way out. This is top level, and then I will kind of help us fill in this chart and we can locate ourselves within it. So the pattern development cycle is easily divided into two main ends. There's the creative side, there's the technical side. And the creative side is the one that everybody thinks of when they think of design. And the technical side is all the stuff that you need to make those fluffy, floaty ideas into something concrete and real. But of course, there's, more shades than just, point A, point B. Within those 2 points, we have 3 distinct phases that I like to think about. So there's the ideation phase, which is again thoroughly what people think of when they think of design. That's the sketching and the swatching and the playing and the trend forecasting. But we cannot stay here forever, not if we want to publish a pattern, right? Eventually, what we have to do is come to a decision, select a final design to work on right now. You can always come back to some of those other ideas, but we need one to work on right now so we can move along. So let's pretend we've got our design selected and we can move on to the refine phase. So once we've come up with those ideas, in the refine phase, what we're doing is we're sampling and we're evaluating. So by sample, I mean, literally coming up with your sample garment, the thing that you will be photographing eventually. It could also be some additional swatches to further refine your idea or, test some things if you're worried about how, for example, maybe a certain round of increases is going to affect your fabric. You might try that out in your sample. So yeah, again, we're just sampling and then we're looking at what we've sampled and saying, hey, do I like this? And once we've come up with a complete finished full sample that we're very happy with, that we love so much, we're ready to move on to this perfect phase. And in the perfect phase, this is where we start to bring in our collaborators. And those collaborators are in the form of technical editors, testers, etc. So you might notice that right in between the refine and the perfect phase, we have pattern grading, which is exactly where we are now. So I have 2 things mainly that I want you to take away from this chart before I move on. And that is that there is a time to be designing and being super, super creative and dreamy, but there's also, unfortunately, a time where that ends. And I say unfortunately, but honestly, this is great news for once you get to the rest of the process, right? After the designing ends, all that we're doing is recreating what is in the sample in other sizes. We aren't adding anything anymore. All we're doing is problem solving. And the best part is that, even if it doesn't feel that way, our problems are in fact solved. All the answers are in the sample that we have created. All of our answers are in the size chart, and all of our answers are in this map. And I'm going to show you how to make this map very soon. So the second thing I want you to take away about this process is that it built on itself, right? Each step is a foundation to the next step. So putting in the work early, putting in the work to document your decisions and interrogate any design choices you make early on is going to pay off dividends later. So the actual pattern grading process can be broken down into 3 simple steps. Those are to review, map, and calculate. Like I was saying, each step is just as important as the last. Each step builds on itself. And so in order to set you up for success, we've got to stay vigilant so that we can have a super successful tech edit and pattern test. Over the years, I've had a number of people ask me, how do you know if a pattern is, quote, ungradable? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. First of all, there are very few patterns that absolutely cannot be graded at all. The real question about something that is, quote, ungradable is how you're addressing the issue within the design. So the best answer for your problem might not be the solution that you hoped for, but usually there really is a solution to be found. You may also be wondering if there's a way to know about these potential difficulties before you spend, hours and hours of math and driving yourself bonkers and just, getting all riled up. And yes, there is. Like I was saying, in the review and in this mapping phase that I'm about to talk to you about, we're going to do all of that work. We're doing all of that up front before we ever even look at a spreadsheet. So if you do this right, by the time we get to your spreadsheets, everything should be very clear and you should be able to run through that relatively quickly. So what do we need to start this review process? When we enter the review phase, you need to have at least one of the following. We need to have a finished sample, or you need to have a detailed sketch. And you can honestly begin with either of these. I think more students than not will go through Pattern Grading Bootcamp using a detailed sketch, unless they, already have a sample that they wanted to work off of to begin with. I honestly suggest starting with a sample for your first time if you can, just because the experience of dealing with something that you can literally see, that you can touch, that you can measure, that you can throw on your body is going to make this whole experience just a lot easier for you than it will be if you're working off of a sketch, right? So the thing about working off of a sketch is that it's got an extra layer of complications to it, So like I said, if you have this actual physical sample, it's something that you can just, look over, see, and interact with. If you're working off of a sketch, it means that you need to be somebody who is very confident in being able to imagine your finished results. You need to be able to estimate measurements visually, right? Because you're going to have to start asking yourself questions like, how wide should this neck be? How long should the body be? And if those are the kind of questions you're struggling with, it's going to make it really hard to move on from that first phase into the next phase and feel confident about your results. So like I said, most students, I think, through Pattern Grading Bootcamp definitely use the detailed sketch more than they use the finished sample. So if that's you, don't worry, that's one of the things that I'm here for as an instructor. I am more than happy to consult with students on, their sketches and help them refine those design ideas so that they feel confident moving through this process. So once you have your finished sample or your detailed sketch, we need to start to ask ourselves some questions, right, in this review. What are we looking for in this review? First thing you're going to do is start looking for the design details. I do 2 passes on my designs. So this is phase 1. I'm looking for the design details and how those design details relate to the body. So what do I mean by relate to the body? I mean getting clear about what makes this design work and how each of these elements can be compared to static points on the body. So for example, neck width, right? I'm comparing that to a static point on the body. For me, it's always this point right here. I'm pointing to the point where my neck and my shoulders meet. This is your high point shoulder. So when I'm deciding how I want a neck to fit, I'm always looking at the neck width. I'm looking at the neck length. So the question I'm asking myself is, how wide is this neck in relation to the high point shoulder? How far is it away? That's just kind of an example of that. And yeah, okay. That's what I wanted to say about this. Then the second pass, right? So we have phase one, we're looking for all of the design details. So design details include things like, how are we going to cast this design on? It's what kind of neckline does this have? It's how long are the sleeves? It's, answering questions like, is this a relaxed fit? Does it have a drop shoulder? Is it a raglan? Anything like that. After you've gathered up all of your design details, the next thing you're going to do in phase two of your review is to start to look for things like measurement and gauge. So instead of just saying, this sweater has a relaxed fit, you're going to put a number with that. So after we've gone through our design review, we've done both of our reviews for the design details and for the measurements. We're going to take all of this information that we have gathered, and we're going to use that to create our map. So here is an example of what your map can and could look like if you join Pattern Grading Bootcamp. So this image over here on the right is what I call the garment planning worksheet. And it's just a neat little organizational tool to help you, keep all of your thoughts together. I've even had a number of students use this to pitch their designs to potential collaborators and in fact land several collaborations, which is awesome. So yeah, that is one of the powers of the garment planning worksheet, is it just really simply and clearly lays out what your design is, what you're going to accomplish, and how exactly you're going to accomplish this. So this here in the example is a design I made for a now defunct magazine called Making Stories. Did this a few years ago. Womp womp, RIP Making Stories. But yeah, you can see all of those measurements that I was talking to you about in the notes section. You can see how I describe in detail everything that I want this design to have. Everything from how it is cast on, how it's cast off, how the stitches change at different points in the body, and even the orientation of the pockets. So this is a document that you're going to end up returning to again and again. If you have any questions while you are grading a garment, you want to come back to this, this document right here. And if you happen to be working with somebody, this is a nice, easy thing that you can hand over to any collaborators. So when I work with a tech editor, this is something that I typically hand my tech editor so that they can reference it while we're working together. So once we've gotten all of this stuff together, it's time to start to consider, how many sizes are you going to offer? How will your stitch and yarn or needle size affect what you can do, right? Because, for example, if you're working with very large needles or large yarns, then, that's going to have an impact on how many sizes you might be able to offer. Compared to if you were working on, maybe something like a 3.5 millimeter needle and a tiny little yarn, right? You can obviously kind of dial in what you're doing a little bit more tightly that way. So after you develop this document and take some time to sit and think about what these potential issues are that are going to come up, in Pattern Grading Bootcamp, I provide students with like a list of things that they should sit and review and consider before moving on. Once you take both of those steps, you're going to be in a great position. You're going to have an extremely clear view of what you're trying to accomplish creatively, how many sizes you can offer, what your potential frustrations might be once you get to the spreadsheet, but you'll also have an idea of how you're going to be able to overcome those while you do that work. So all of this is combined, all of this is together, and at this point, we're just about ready to do some math. I'm going to take one quick moment here. I saw there's a few things coming in the chat. I'm going to take a look at what these say. Oh, thank you guys for being so complimentary. Somebody asked if this recording will be available after the presentation. Absolutely, it will be. I will be sending that out tomorrow along with a link to register for Pattern Grading Bootcamp if that's something that is interesting to you. But anyway, here we are. Like I said, we already assembled our map. We've answered some of our own questions. And now we're ready to tackle the true beast. We're ready to tackle the spreadsheet, right? So the first thing we're going to do once we enter our spreadsheet is we need to start doing our setup. That means importing the size chart that you're going to use for this and articulating what the grade rules are. So if you don't know what grade rules are, grade rules is how we refer to the way a number changes from one size to the next. So how much it goes up, how much it goes down, that's called the grade rule. So after we've added the size chart and the grade rules to our spreadsheet, the next thing we're going to do is add finished measurements. And if you remember from our map, we already have the finished measurements laid out for our sample size. And if we combined that information, our finished sample measurements with our grade rules and our size chart, we'll be able to extrapolate out finished measurements for all of our sizes. Once we've extrapolated that out, we can start to get into the real nitty-gritty. We can start to calculate those stitch and row counts along with the increases and decreases. So ideally, you'll have a template or two you might use for certain constructions that you come back to often. And personally, I like to keep my templates rather loose. I like to build my spreadsheets as I go. So by build my spreadsheets as I go, I mean, adding in lines for the stitches and the row counts, increases, decreases, and then of course, lines to check my work, right? It usually takes me less than 15 minutes if I'm working from scratch to completely set up a brand new spreadsheet. After I'm done calculating my stitch and row counts, increases, decreases, checking my work, of course, eventually I'm going to take all of that and copy it into my final written pattern. So I usually keep, I usually don't say how long it takes for me to grade any one pattern, just because it can be so highly variable. I do have people who ask me, and in the past, the example that I've given is if I was doing something extremely, extremely basic, very, very basic, if, say a DK weight, stockinette, drop shoulder design, I think I could do something like that without a template, start to finish in maybe an hour, But like I said, as soon as you start to add in something like a cable or lace or color work, the difficulty kind of picks up exponentially. So out of curiosity, I would love to ask all of you, if you've ever graded a pattern before, what was it? And how long did it take you? And then in an ideal world, how long would it take you after practice? So go ahead and pop those in the comments. And while you guys are filling in your answers, I'm going to tell you a quick little story about my friend Emma. So, Emma was a student who joined in my very first round of pattern grading boot camp. This is even before the warm up. And she brought in this really cute little color work you designed to class, and she was great, super engaged, amazing contributor. She did an awesome job on the project. And then later, she ended up submitting a piece to a magazine. She submitted a cowl design, and the design was accepted. And that was awesome. We celebrated. But when she was telling me this, she's like, they had a twist. They accepted her design, but they did not want a cowl. And the magazine was like, we really love this layout, but we want it on a sweater. So that's how this sweater, the Maya sweater, came into being. This was originally published in the autumn 2022 issue of Pom Pom Quarterly. R.I.P. Pom Pom. And the thing I love most about this is that when Emma was telling me the story, she did not even bat an eyelash before she said yes. She had already accepted this by the time she's telling me the story, right? She saw that, she had this opportunity. She knew that she had the skills to make it happen, and she just went for it. And I love that. So, to me, like I said, this story shows a few things. One, which is how grading is going to allow you to work smarter, not harder, by allowing you to take things that you might already have, for example, a color work cowl, and it's going to allow you to expand them into more things like sweaters, right? You're going to be able to do way, way more complex designs than you were before. And, in 2025, you don't even have to wait for a magazine. I wouldn't suggest that you wait for a magazine to give you this opportunity. This is something, obviously, that you can just do for yourself as an independent designer. So if you have a cowl or other accessory garment or other accessory just kind of laying around that you might want to translate into a garment, that's a really good idea for something that you could bring into pattern grading bootcamp, because one of the things that I think makes pattern grading bootcamp so unique is that everybody brings in a real world project. It's all about taking something that you want to work on, that you're really excited about, and bringing it into being. I think honestly, that's like always the best way that I learn, when I'm working on something that I'm like really excited about, not just like some rote little practice project. So, whew, that's a lot. I tried really, really hard, you guys. Oh my gosh, I had to cut so much out of this. And honestly, I might have another little surprise planned for you guys in the next day or two. You didn't hear that from me. But yeah, I could keep talking about this with you guys all night, but I want to be respectful for your time. So let's just do this quick little recap here. We just went over what grading is, why exactly it is so, so important for both designers and editors to know about this process. I talked about creating patterns for a wide variety of sizes as a requirement, right? This is not a nice to have. This is mandatory in today's world. Today's makers are savvier than they've ever been. And, you need to be there to meet them, right? I showed you how pattern grading breaks down into 3 simple, repeatable steps, and how these steps are going to work for you in any craft, right? So if you are a knitter, if you are a crocheter, this process is literally exactly the same. By repeating these steps, the pattern grading process is going to become a lot less of a burden to you, and you're going to be able to begin to blend in your current creative process, right? As I said earlier, ease is something that comes with practice. So if you do enough projects, eventually this is going to be work that feels like you're just on autopilot. You can do this in your sleep, right? This is a process that is going to work for anyone on any project, because it's not about pre-made formulas. It's about, having that holistic you. Um, this is not about making your project fit into my framework, right? This is about giving you the skills that you need to accomplish your vision, and then hopefully to help you kind of build that trust in yourself that you're able to expand that vision into something bigger and more ambitious, and just, really push that creative process that you're in forward. So I want you to imagine how much more you'll be able to do when you're not just tying yourself up in knots, worrying that you forgot something on your spreadsheet, or you forgot to write something on your garment planning worksheet, or, just that ambient fear that starts to creep in when you're feeling, at your lowest, when you're kind of like most alone. Um, what I'm offering you today is not just a few rote items to memorize, right? Like I said, this is a framework. This is a new way to see and view the projects that you're already doing, and to really kind of be able to dig under the hood and start to understand why you're making the decisions that you are. Okay. Because like I said, a sweater is kind of like a piece of soft architecture. So this is the real missing piece, and the thing that you need to understand your garments and have that clear vision as to what you're making. And once you have that, you're going to be totally, totally unstoppable. I'm going to stop here for one quick second, and I'm going to take a little look at some more of these comments. My first graded pattern releases on Thursday. Congratulations. And it took dozens of hours of redoing math and fighting with spreadsheets. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if that's your first, that's fine. Ryan says, I've only done a hat. It took probably 15 to 20 minutes, but it only had 4 sizes and it was super easy beginner. No increase, decrease. Yeah, yeah. Hats go pretty quickly. That's true. Helen says, last thing I graded was a pullover with a color work yoke. I think it took 2 hours to grade and then another hour to double check the tech editing results. That's awesome. Great work, Helen. That's awesome. Sweater for personal use, not production, took 30 to 45 minutes. Amazing. I have somebody who I use. Nice. I've tried to grade patterns, but never succeeded. That's why I'm here. Yeah, that's okay. Listen, it happens. New to publishing patterns for others to make. Still in the process of grading some hat patterns. Have a lace capelet that I want to grade later as well. Very nice. Yeah, I know that the Pattern Grading Bootcamp really focuses on garments, not accessories. But yeah, definitely part of inclusive design is giving people sizing options on, things like capelets and shawls and even hats. So that's awesome. Great work. I'm so glad to see that you guys are already kind of getting your start and, working on some of these smaller projects. So thanks again for joining me tonight. Pattern Grading Bootcamp is open for registration. I'm going to be sending out the link to register along with the replay of this presentation. So all of that is going to go out tomorrow. It should land in your inbox. So keep your eyes peeled. And I'm going to have this replay available for a week. So you will have until February to take it all in. And in the meantime, if you have any further questions, I am more than happy to answer those. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am more than happy to take some questions from all of you. I don't know what I did with this invite or what's going on with Zoom, but a lot of you guys seem to have the same name as me. That's an interesting one. So if you guys are new to Zoom, there is a little reaction button at the bottom of your screen. If you're on desktop, it has a little heart that says react. So if you press that, there is a button that says raise your hand. So yeah, if you would like to use that to raise your hand, or if you'd like to physically raise your hand to ask any questions. Hey, good to see you.
I'm apparently you.
Yeah, your name is Julie Robinson now.
That is Julie Day. um, I know that you can make some pretty serious money at pattern grading. What are we looking at for the kind of money that could be made doing this for other people?
For other people,
Yeah.
definitely depends on your client list. I've heard a pretty wide range of rates. So are you looking for like an hourly rate?
Yeah, just roughly. I mean, not specifically, just you know, trying to make the money in pattern writing is more difficult. Not really thinking I'm interested in going the tech editing route. I like spreadsheets. I like getting into math. So I was thinking
Uh,
it might be the way that I could, actually make some income beyond designing things for fun and hopefully money.
right. Okay. Got you. Yeah. There's definitely people who, yeah, like you said, only focus on pattern grading. I feel like I've heard anywhere between like 25 to like $60. It's like I said, like it can be a pretty big range. It depends on your experience and what your client list is. But
Probably what you're grading too. I mean, the more complicated it could be, like you were
mhm.
saying, shawls and capelets and stuff are not, I don't think that that's as intense as grading a sweater, right?
No, it's not as intense, but it would also take you much less time.
Right.
So, I mean, just personally, from like a business standpoint, I would encourage you not to base your hourly rate on the difficulty of the item you're working on.
Right.
I would set your rate as your rate, and then, you know, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Good to see you. Julia.
Hello. I had sent in this question. It's related. It's not exactly grading, but it's about estimating yardage for the sizes I didn't knit.
Ah, yes, yes.
And I've come up, I've done searches and oh, you figure out the area and then the inches per gram and whatever. And figuring out how to figure out is for me the hard part. Like I don't know how to get that concept into actually doing it. Is Do you have recommendations for that as well?
I don't have like, for example, a blog post that I can send you to right now. I will say, based on what you've told me and seeing that in the com or in my inbox, I don't think that me talking you through it right here would be the most helpful.
Oh no, I
Um,
didn't expect
yeah.
you to do that.
It is something that I do cover in Pattern Grading Bootcamp and kind of show you how to set up some spreadsheets. So yeah,
Okay, thank you.
of course. There is a question in here from Tia. Oh, could I tell you more about the bootcamp structure? Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So the bootcamp itself has 5 weeks of material delivered to you once a week. And after you finish the instruction weeks, you have 3 additional weeks of office hours where you get to meet with me live. So during the instruction weeks, you also have weekly office hours with me. So we're just constantly checking in. I'm seeing how you're doing, answering any questions, and helping you kind of like get that ball rolling and then keeping it moving so that we can get at least one project finished by the end of it. So, we'll start off like a little bit slow in the first week. It's really, making sure that you have that design idea totally polished and kind of like ready to go. And then, yeah, I'll help you build your garment planning worksheet. I'll show you how to set up your spreadsheet. And if you're somebody who is not a spreadsheet person, you found them difficult in the past, I have a variety of resources to help you overcome that. So I have some spreadsheet 101 classes, just kind of showing you the lay of the land, where everything goes. I have what I call the toolbox. And so the toolbox is a bunch of little modules to help you calculate increases and decreases. I have a series of videos talking you through what each of these modules does, how to use it. And then I think this is one of the things people like the most, aside from when I talk about size charts, but I have a bunch of very detailed step-by-step instructions on how exactly to construct your size charts. So when I say in-depth, I think most of those videos are somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30 to 45 minutes. They're very, very detailed. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's like something else I'm now totally forgetting. Maybe it will come to me. Let me see. From the comments, it says, will you offer the boot camp again later in the year if I don't have the time to designate right now? I only offer pattern grading boot camp once a year in January. I'm kind of thinking about ways that I can offer versions of it in the future to people, so it's like more on demand. But right now the boot camp, as I'm describing it to you, is only available this way and in January. You also asked exactly how much does it cost. So the boot camp is one payment of $579 or 3 monthly payments of $230 to save your spot. Estimate time, we would be investing in the workshop, maybe hours per week. Okay, that's another one that can be a little bit difficult just because, again, it's going to come back to what kind of design you want to work on. So in the past, for example, I've had people have these super, super ambitious ideas about, doing maybe a top-down contiguous puff sleeve mohair, designs. And maybe I have to talk them down from that a little bit. Like I'm not the kind of person who wants to discourage anybody from living their dreams, but I want to help you guys be realistic about what kind of results you're going to get, and get you guys projects that you're going to be happy with and proud of. But yeah, hours per week, very, very hard for me to say. I would say out of the 5 weeks, there are maybe 2 to 3 that are going to require you to work at least 2 to 3 hours or more total time to kind of stay up. But that's also one of the reasons that I offer these additional office hours after the instruction weeks end, because I understand life happens, I understand that there's a lot to do. So, you have those 5 weeks to kind of be on top of it. But you also have the additional weeks to make up, should you need it. And finally, somebody said, what if I'm pretty bad at math? That's why we got the computer. The computer is on our side. One of the best things I think about knitting design when it comes to math is that it is applied math. It is a real world application. It's something you can see and feel, and it's not theoretical. If something's not working, you will know. Right? It's very basic math. It's all about algebra, really. It's adding, subtracting, and yeah, algebra, finding unknown numbers. Bethan says, I'm looking forward to your potential variations in the future because January to March is my busiest time. Yeah, I know. That's like always the hardest thing, is just kind of like making something that works for you guys and works for me and works for all of us. And life, what you gonna do? Anything else I can do for anybody before we sign off for the night? Like I said, replay is going out tomorrow. I'll send out that sign up link, and the sign up link will have all this stuff that I'm talking about verbally, and I'm sure tons of things that I'm forgetting that I've made over the years for the boot camp. It'll have all of that laid out so you can come take a look at it, visit it, revisit it. Yeah, whatever you need. And then, of course, if for some reason there's a question that you cannot have answered on the website, email me. I'm here. I'm going to call it. So good to have all of you here. Good to see you all again. I hope you have a great night. Bye.